For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kern. I guess I'm the last born son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son. Let's put that together. Today I got the opportunity to remember a man that touched many lives through his words and his message. A man who dedicated himself to the betterment of others through education and guidance. A man that welcomed any and all of God's creatures into his home, regardless of how many legs they had. I can think of a few animals that came by our ranch out there. Today I've been blessed with the opportunity to help us remember a coach, a teacher, a counselor, a mentor, a man from whom I inherited my name, and who I'm proud to call my hero. My dad. So trying to capture the words to describe my dad in any brevity proved to be quite the task. In fact, it seemed insurmountable. How does one go about describing a man who dedicated his entire life to the enrichment of others? I thought it would be most fitting to provide a quick glimpse into the life that he so generously bestowed upon a kid who was lucky enough to be called his little buddy. From my earliest memories, I can always recall my dad being a loving, selfless man who cherished relationships. In all his 79 years, I don't think my dad ever once met a stranger. Didn't matter where or when he encountered, or who he encountered, sorry. He would always approach people with a smile and genuine interest in who they were, where they came from, and most importantly, what they needed. My dad is a generous man, giving selflessly to all those in need, gifts large and small. Sometimes it was just a kind ear to speak to. Other times it was advice, be it solicited or not. I can recall a number of times my dad just offered me little words of wisdom. Jamie, if you keep hitting that tennis ball against the roof of the garage, you're probably going to break a window. These words echoed in my mind as I took the long trudge down the hall to report the shattered glass now laying in the I think he's still chuckling to himself today. My dad was a strong man who never feared a good day's work. One of my favorite lessons from my dad was a story that he himself was told as a boy, the story of the $5 lawn, about a boy who would tend to the yard of an elderly woman down the street who promised to reward him for the perfect lawn in the amount of $5. One July day as a teenager, I was given the chance to strive towards my $5 lawn. After toiling in the South Texas heat through 5 acres of mowing, edging, raking, sweeping, and picking up sticks, I was handed $4.75 by my smiling father who said he did a great job with a twinkle in his eye. I realize now, looking back at the lesson that he was imparting upon me, that we should always strive for perfection and that hard work is the foundation for continuous improvement. Back then, I just figured that metaphors didn't take into account inflation. My dad was a dedicated man. He spent many an afternoon attending practices and games and meetings for whatever sports or events that Katie and I were involved in. I could always rely on the comfort that regardless of the outcome of the event, how I played, or what occurred, that Dad would be waiting in the stands with a smile on his face, a few uplifting words, which always ended with, "I'm proud of you." In fact, in all my years of athletics, I can only recall one event which my dad was not able to attend. I shall never forget the day. It's Friday in the fall, and I think school was out on holiday, or we were skipping, one of the two. Justin Hughes and myself were out palling around San Antonio when I received a call from my dad about 2.5 hours before game time. My dad called to report that he was having an irregular heartbeat and needed to be taken to the hospital. Okay. So Justin and I hurriedly drove home and dropped Justin off on the way so he could head to the game, and I picked up my dad and we headed to the emergency room. So as I was dropping him off at the emergency room, I told him, all right, I'll go park the car and then I'll come meet you inside. And he said, no, you got a game to play. Despite my resistance, he said, no, you've got a game to play, you should focus on that. He calmly told me good luck, that he loved me, calmly closed the door, walked into the yard to check himself in. Jim Kern. A bit shaken, I heeded the words of my father and drove over to the field house to join the pregame preparations. When I arrived, I discovered that my dad had called the school, informed the coaches of the situation, and I was met by Coach Touton outside the field house with a warm embrace from another loving father. I was overwhelmed by the selfless act and knew that that moment that everything would be fine. After a great game in which we beat Temple High and in which I caught a touchdown pass, my mom met me outside the field house with my dad, with a phone with my dad already on the line. From our conversation, I learned that he had insisted that the nursing staff bring him a radio so that he could tune into the game. And despite being bedridden, he already knew that I had caught the touchdown, that we had beaten a tough rival and a huge win for our team. And he also told me that he tried to get the staff to let him out after halftime so he could come watch the second half. But they insisted that he stay overnight. I think his exact words were, "They locked me in from the outside." I'll never forget how amazing it felt to know that he was there with me throughout the entire game. To know that he was so happy that I caught the pass to help the team win the game. And that he was so very proud of me. How'd I get so lucky? My dad was an excellent coach to many, be it in life or athletics. He always had a few pieces of advice for me. One, as I mentioned earlier, to be the hardest worker or player on the team. Secondly, in basketball, when rebounding, always go up with both hands. This is a message I wrote on the inside of my shoes every year that I played the game. And last but not least, he told me many, many times, if you can touch it, you can catch it, referring to receivers that would tip the ball and let it drop it incomplete. I used to think these words were specific sports. But looking back, I realize now that he's offering much more than that. These would serve as a wonderful metaphor for any task you take on in life. When you've got a goal, work hard for it. Go at it with both hands. And if you touch it, you can catch it. I recount these words daily. These powerful words from the best coach I ever had. Dad left us in September for a better place, in which he could spread his wisdom to all those who have left before us. And when it comes time to meet the Lord, when it comes our time to meet the Lord, I know that he'll be waiting there in the stands with a smile, a few pieces of advice, and of course, he'll let us know how proud of us he is. Love you, Dad. I'll miss you like crazy. Can't wait to be with you again.